All right, folks. In our last video, we talked about the word term. And we learned that in math, a term is made up of two parts. It has a number part that is multiplied by a variable part. So a term could have a number part like 5 multiplied by a variable part x. The 5 was called the coefficient, so the number was called the coefficient. And then the variable part, x, we referred to as being the last name. So 5x would be one example of a term. Another, I could have a number like -3 multiplied by x to the second power y. So in that term, the number part would be the -3. That's called the coefficient. And the variable part is x squared y. So remember, you can have more than one variable, and those variables can have exponents on them. And all of that goes together to make the variable part, which we refer to as being the last name. We also saw that we could have things like AB. That is a term. Remember what the number part is? The number part is an invisible 1. So that 1 would be the coefficient. And then the variable part would be AB. So that's the last name. And then one last one, let's say that I have -9. -9. Remember, that is also a term even though it's missing the variable part. The coefficient would be the -9. And then he just simply doesn't have a variable part. He doesn't have a last name. So all of these are examples of terms. And what we did specifically last time is we learned how to recognize like terms. And what we need to remember is that like terms have exactly the same last name. So in like terms, the variable part of the first term will be exactly the same as the variable part in the second term. So this is what we have to have like terms. We have to have a variable part in that first term that is equal to the variable part in that second term. They have to be identical to each other. Now, today we are going to put this idea of like terms to good use. Because today we are going to learn to simplify math problems by combining like terms. So we're going to simplify by combining like terms. And here is what all of this depends on. You need to know that you can only add or subtract like terms. So let me show you just some little simple examples to show you what I'm talking about here. So I could take the term 2x and add it with the term 3x. So what you see here is a problem where there are two terms, 2x and 3x. And I'm asking you to take those two terms and add them together. Now I can only add these if they are like terms. And what does it take to make them like terms? Well, what it takes is a last name that is the same. So what is the last name for 2x? Well, that's the variable part, which is x. What is the last name for 3x? Well, again, that's the variable part, which is x. So I want you to notice that these two are like terms. They have exactly the same last name, x and x. Those are identical. So I can add these together. So to add these together, what we will do is we'll do exactly what this problem says. We'll do 2 plus 3. So we'll add these number parts together. We'll do 2 plus 3, which is 5, and then we will keep the same last name. So 2x's plus 3x's gives me 5x's. So notice what I did there. When the last names were the same, I added those number parts together. 2 plus 3 is 5, and then I kept that same last name. All right, let's say I had a problem like this. 5a minus 2a. 5a minus 2a. So notice this time that I'm asking you to take the term 5a and subtract from it the term 2a. Now I can only add or subtract these if they are like terms, so let's see if they are. So when I look at 5a, the variable part is a. When I look at 2a, the variable part is a. So those are like terms. They have exactly the same last name. So I can do this problem. I can combine these. So I'm going to do what it says. Look at the number parts. I'm going to do 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2. So I'm going to do what that says. 5 minus 2 is 3. And then I keep exactly the same last name, which would be a. So if I have 5a and I subtract 2a from it, then I have 3a remaining. This problem, by the way, would be a lot like what you did in elementary school. When they asked you questions like, you have 5 apples and somebody takes away 2 of your apples, how many apples remain? So 5 apples minus 2 apples is 3 apples. So 5 apples minus 2 apples is 3 apples. That's what that problem is saying. So we can add or subtract like terms, and notice what that allows us to do. It allows us to make things simpler by combining terms and making them into one. Let's put one last problem up here with these. Let's say I wanted you to do 2x plus 3y. So this problem is saying take the term 2x and add to that the term 3y. Let's look at last names. The last name for this term is x. The last name for that term is 2x. The last name for this term is y. So you'll notice this time those two do not have the same last name. So I can't add those together. I can't combine those. So what is 2x plus 3y? Well, it is 2x plus 3y. I can't combine those because they aren't like terms. So you can add like terms, you can subtract like terms. So if they have the same last name, adding or subtracting is possible. Okay, so let's do some examples. So on each of these problems, we are going to simplify by combining the like terms in each problem. Okay, so in our first problem, we are going to do 7p minus 1 minus 9p plus 5. So let's look first at how many terms this problem has. 7 times p, a number times a variable, so right there is one term. Minus 1, right here is another term. He doesn't have a last name. Minus 9 times p, right here is another term. And then plus 5, right here is another term. So this problem has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Now what we're going to do is see if we can make this problem shorter, if we can simplify it by combining like terms. So here's how we're going to get started. And I want you to notice that as I wrote this problem down, I kind of spaced it out quite a bit. And you'll see here as I work it why I want you to do that. So we're going to simplify by adding or subtracting our like terms. All right, so let's start out up front here. Our very first term is 7p. that term has a last name of P. So what I want to do is look at this problem and see if any of the other terms have exactly the same last name. So I'm looking for terms that have a last name of P. Well, I see that right here with this guy. And I want you to notice this is minus 9P. Minus 9P. So I'm going to draw a box around him in the same color to say that 7P and this minus 9P are like terms. They have the same last name. So that's how I'm going to identify those. So because these are like terms, I can do what this says. I can combine them. So to combine them, what you're going to do is this. You are going to do 7 minus 9. You're going to do exactly what it says. It says to do 7 minus 9. 7 minus 9 is negative 2. And then remember, when you combine like terms, you keep the same last name. So that's going to be a negative 2P. So 7P minus 9P become one term, and that term is a negative 2P. All right, now, let's switch colors. The next term in line for me is a minus 1, which makes it a negative 1. So I'm going to put a box around that negative 1 in blue. Now, what is his last name? Well, since he doesn't have a variable part, we know he doesn't have a last name. So is anybody else on the board like that? Do any of these other terms not have a last name? And the answer is yes. This guy on the end doesn't have a last name either. So the like term for minus 1 is this plus 5. Is this plus 5. Now what I want you to notice is that when I put these boxes around these terms, I'm not just putting a box around the 5. I'm making sure I include that plus that's in front of him because that belongs to him. That tells me whether I'm going to add or subtract. That tells me if he's positive or negative. So now we're going to, again, do what this says. These two are like terms, so we're going to combine them. So I'm going to do a negative 1 plus 5. I'm going to combine these number parts by doing what the problem says. It says to do a negative 1 plus 5. Now when you do that, negative 1 plus 5, you're going to get a positive 4. So I'm going to come down here since it's positive and put a plus, and then write my 4. So this problem that has 4 terms, 7P, minus 1, minus 9P, plus 5, when I simplify it, simplifies down to this. It is a negative 2P plus 4, which notice means I only have now 2 terms. 2 terms. So I went from 4 down to 2. That makes that problem simpler. It makes it easier to look at, and I have done that by combining my like terms, the ones that have the same last name. All right, here's another one. We're going to do 5x plus 7y minus x plus 2y plus 3x. Now, remember a term has to have a number part and a variable part. So let's see how many terms we've got. We've got 5x. We've got plus 7y. We've got minus x. Now I want you to remember here what the number part is. There's an invisible 1 there. We've got plus 2y, and we've got plus 3x. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms in this problem. And we're going to see if we can shorten that. We're going to see if we can simplify it by combining like terms. So I'm always going to start at the beginning. So the first term I see is 5 times x. 5x. His last name is x. So I'm going to look through all of these other terms. I'm going to see if anybody else has a last name of x. And if they do, I'm going to put a red box around them just like I did around the 5x. So as I look, right here I see another term that has x as the last name. So I'm going to put a red box around minus 1x. Now notice I'm grabbing that minus sign with him because that belongs to him. I also see out here on the end a term that has x as the last name. So I'm going to put a red box around plus 3x. So the three terms that have red boxes are all like terms because they all have that last name of x. Now, that means I can combine these. And I can combine them by combining the number parts. So I can take my 5 minus my 1 plus my 3. So my 5 minus my 1 plus my 3. So 5 minus 1 we know is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 what? Well, the last name for all of them was x, so this is going to be 7x. So notice, 3 terms have become 1. And I could combine those because they were like terms. Now, on to new terms. So I'm going to switch colors. So the next term in line that I see up here is this plus 7y. So I'm going to put a blue box around that. So plus 7y. Does anybody else have the same last name of y? Why, yes, this guy right here does. So I'm going to put a blue box around this plus 2y as well. Now, because those are like terms, I can combine them. And I can do that by combining their number parts. So I'm going to do what this says. This says to do a positive 7 plus 2. A positive 7 plus 2. So if I do a positive 7 plus 2, that is going to be a positive 9. So positive 9, I'm going to put plus 9 because he's positive. Plus 9 what? Well, the last name of these two terms was y, so this guy's last name will stay the same and will be y. So notice in this problem that when I combine the terms that are like terms, I end up with 7x plus 9y. I have gone from having 5 terms down to just 2. So this is making things simpler for us. You will use this skill a lot this year, so please make sure you understand it. All right, next up, 8k squared minus k minus 5k plus 7 minus 2k squared. Now let's take a look at how many terms this is. We want a number part and a variable part. So here's number, variable. 8k squared is one term. Here we have number part, variable part. The number is missing, so we know it's a 1. So this minus 1k is term number 2. Variable part, number part. So right here, this minus 5k is term number 3. Plus 7 has a number part, no variable. We know that's okay there. Okay though, he's still a term. So there's term number 4. And then minus 2k squared is term number 5. So 5 terms in this problem right now. Let's see if we can simplify. So I'm going to start out with red, and I'm going to put a box around the very first term. There's no magic to that. I just always start at the beginning. So what is the last name for this term? Well, the last name is k to the second power. So anybody who is a like term for him is also going to have k to the second power as his last name. So as I look across the board, out here at the end I see k to the second power. So this is my like term. So I'm going to put a red box around minus 2k squared. Grab that minus sign with him because that belongs to him. The sign right in front of that belongs to him. So I'm going to combine these two. They have the same last name. So I'm going to do that by putting number parts together. So I have 8 minus 2 that I need to do. 8 minus 2. 8 minus 2 is 6. And then I keep the same last name, so it's going to be 6k to the second power. So the two terms in the red boxes have now become 1. All right, let's switch colors. I'm going to go to the next term that I haven't done anything with. That is this negative 1k. Now I want you to notice he has a last name of k. Look at the other terms. Does anybody have that? Right here we have another term that has a last name of k. So I'm going to put a box around minus 5k. This is minus 1k, this is minus 5k, so make sure you get those signs. Now, I can combine these because they have the same last name. So I'm going to do my number parts. This says to do a negative 1 minus 5. a negative 1 minus 5. And if I do negative 1 minus 5, I get negative 6. So I'm going to put minus 6 because this 6 is negative. That's what this minus sign tells me, is that he's negative. And then keep the same last name, so K. Now, you'll notice we still have one term that isn't boxed up yet. So I'm going to switch colors. This term is a plus 7. He has no last name. You will notice that nobody else on the board is like him, so he is not going to combine with anybody else. We're just going to bring down our plus 7. So your answer on this question is 6k squared minus 6k plus 7. You have gone from 5 terms down to 3. All right. A squared plus 7ab. Let me clean that up. A little boo-boo there. So a squared plus 7ab minus 10ab plus b squared. Now let's look first at our terms. Number times a variable. Here we have what number times a squared? Well, you know there's a 1 there. So that's 1 times a squared plus 7 times ab minus 10 times ab plus 1 times b squared. So this problem has a total of 4 terms. Now, start out at the very beginning. We have 1a squared as our first term. His last name is a squared. Do any of the other terms up here have that same last name of a squared? And the answer is no. So we are just going to bring down that 1a squared and put him in our answer. He is not going to combine with anybody. All right, trade colors. Your next term is plus 7ab. Plus 7ab. Now, is anybody else like that? Do they have a last name of AB? And the answer is yes. His next door neighbor has that. So in a blue box, I am also going to mark negative 10ab or minus 10ab. So because these two are like terms, I can combine them by putting the number parts together. I have a positive 7 minus 10. Notice those signs that I'm boxing up with my terms are telling me whether they're positive or negative. They're telling me whether to add or subtract. So I'm doing a positive 7 minus 10, which is negative 3. So on the paper, I'm going to put minus 3 because he's negative 3, and then keep the same last name of AB. And again, here you'll notice only one term, not boxed up. We have plus 1b squared. Nobody else up here has a last name of b squared, so that means we'll just bring down that plus b squared and put them in the answer. And right there is my simplified answer. So the whole goal with combining like terms is to make the number of terms in your problem smaller, to combine what you can. All right, let's get one last one here. We're going to do 4x squared minus 7 plus 2x minus 3x squared plus 8x minus 6. So this problem has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terms. 6 terms total in this problem. And we're going to see if we can shorten this up. So start out at the beginning with your first term, 4x squared. Last name is x squared. So does anybody else have that same last name of x squared? And we can see right here that we do. So in a red box, I am going to put minus 3x squared. Grab that sign that's in front of the number because you need it. It tells you if it's positive or negative. It tells you add or subtract. So to combine these two like terms, we're going to deal with our numbers. We have 4 minus 3. So to combine these two, it's telling me to do 4 minus 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 minus 3 is 1, and then I keep the same last name, which was x squared. So 4x squared minus 3x squared gives me 1x squared. All right, new color. Let's go to the next term in line, which is minus 7. That makes him a negative 7. Now notice, he does not have a last name. So is anybody else like that? Does anybody else up here not have a last name? And the answer is yes, way out here on the end. You have this minus 6, which also doesn't have a last name. So we can combine these two terms that are in the blue boxes. We're going to work with the number parts. So we're going to work with negative 7 minus 6. Negative 7 minus 6. That is a negative 13. So because it's negative, I'll put minus and then put my 13. Now, let's grab another color. So we're not done yet. The next term in line is plus 2x, positive 2x. Last name of x. You see right over here we have another term that is like him, plus 8x, so positive 8x. So we're going to combine those two. So we are going to do a positive 2 plus 8. A positive 2 plus 8. And when we do a positive 2 plus 8, we get a positive 10. So we're going to put down plus 10, and then don't forget to bring down and reattach the same last name, which was an x. So when I take this problem and combine the terms that are like terms, here is what I'll get for my answer. 1x squared minus 13 plus 10x. So that makes that shorter. Okay, before I leave you, I want to show you the assignment you're going to be working on today and make sure you see how this is going to go. On the slides for this assignment, you're going to drag and drop colored rectangles provided to mark like terms with the same color. So you're going to drag and drop these instead of having to draw them like I was in my examples. And then you're going to simplify the expression by combining the like terms that you identified and type your answer in the text box that appears. So here's the problem, and you'll notice that each term is in its own little box. So what you'll do here is start with your red squares and start out with your first term, which is 5x. And you will put red squares on every term that is a like term for 5x. So they need a last name of x. So it looks like negative 2x would get a red rectangle, plus 6x would get a red rectangle. Let's see, minus 1x would get a red rectangle. Don't forget there's a 1 in front of that. Plus 3x would get a red rectangle, and then plus 15x. So you have identified that all of those are like terms by putting red rectangles around all of them. And so now you'll combine them by doing what the number part says. So with a calculator, do 5 minus 2 plus 6 minus 1 plus 3 plus 15. So 5 minus 2 plus 6 minus 1 plus 3 plus 15. So let's see what that would be. 9, 8, 11, 26, I believe. So you'll click over here and you'll type 26 and then put the last name of x on that. All right, now you'll switch to green rectangles. So you'll do positive 40, which notice doesn't have a last name. Neither does minus 9. Neither does plus 1. Neither does minus 8. And neither does plus 7. So we'll mark all of these in green because they all have in common that they don't have a last name. So now you will combine these by grabbing your calculator and doing what the numbers say to do. So you're going to do positive 40 minus 9 plus 1 minus 8 plus 7. And that should give you 31. So you'll click down here where you left off at your 26x, and since it's positive 31, you'll put plus 31. And there's your answer. So that's how you're going to interact with your assignment today and how you are going to answer your questions. So I wanted you to see that. If you have any questions about what like terms are or about how to combine those, then please let me know.